Welcome to the Weather Insights Podcast. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Lindner. And this is our tropical update for the evening of, what is it, July 3rd? I'm losing track of my days, Jeff, doing these two-a-days. For the evening of July 3rd, and we have the latest on Beryl, which is now bearing down on the island country of Jamaica. You can see the position there at 5 p.m. Just a few moments ago, just south of Jamaica. Of course, they are under a hurricane warning as Beryl is dumping a lot of rain and high winds there, I'm sure. Cayman Islands, there is still a hurricane warning in effect there. And then after it gets past the Cayman Islands, there tomorrow afternoon, it will be weakening some, will lose its major status, more than likely down to a hurricane. Now, Jeff, we have hurricane warnings in effect for the eastern Yucatan Peninsula. Also there around Belize, we have tropical storm watch there in the yellow area. And now what's been added with the last advisory is a tropical storm watch on the western side of the Yucatan Peninsula. That is because they expect Beryl to weaken. You can see it would be a tropical storm there Friday afternoon as it crosses the Yucatan. It'll maintain tropical storm status as it enters the Gulf of Mexico early Saturday morning, and then is expected right now to become a Category 1 hurricane, minimal Category 1 hurricane, before making landfall somewhere around northern Mexico to southern Texas. You can see the cone of uncertainty there is still pretty wide. So there is not a lot of confidence exactly where Beryl is going, but we're pretty sure that it's confined now to the South Texas area, and landfall will be sometime between Sunday afternoon and Monday afternoon, Jeff.
Yeah, so, looking at the infrared satellite here this afternoon, we've actually seen Beryl possibly get slightly a little bit better organized here, waiting on the aircraft to get in there to kind of check this out. This might have been a little bit of a temporary run here, possibly some enhancement with the higher terrain here of Jamaica. There are some pretty tall mountains here in Jamaica, and some of that may have enhanced that and tightened that up a little bit. But you can see here in the last frame, what looked like the eye was starting to come back out again. It's kind of looks like the convection starting to fall apart. The thunderstorm is starting to fall apart. And so the whole trend over the last day to day and a half has been slow weakening. It's been a little bit slower than we were expecting. And so major hurricane status continuing here, the Cayman Islands up here over into this area. But the pressure continues to come up and the shear continues to be over here in the Western Caribbean. You can see these tops of these thunderstorms blowing off to the northeast. That is the shear that is impacting the western side of this. And as this comes on off here to the west, we do anticipate the shear continuing to take a toll on this. So while it is, there's been a lot of, it's stronger than expected and stronger storms are going to go more to the right or to the north. Yes, it is stronger than expected, but it is weakening. And really, it hasn't deviated a whole lot from the forecast track. It did not go over Jamaica. It did not go north of Jamaica. It went south of Jamaica as was forecast. Right. And so even though it's a little bit stronger than we were thinking at this point, it hasn't deviated a whole lot from the forecast and the track here. And leading us into the the track forecast, you can see, and I did include on this time all of the models that we kind of look at. So the GFS is in green. The European here is in red. The ensemble mean is in the dark red. The dashed is the deterministic run. And then we have the UK Met further to the south here. And you can kind of see we are starting to see a much better consensus now here in northern Mexico, possibly up into deep southern Texas, for ultimately what will potentially be the final landfall here. And we still have a little bit of maybe some artificialness, if you will, if that's a word, here to the north. With some of these ensemble members that go out in time further. And so that's kind of pushing this mean a little bit further to the north and to the right. But if you kind of see and follow the National Hurricane Center dots, which is the forecast, you can see they're going here a little bit further to the west of the mean, closer to the model consensus here into northern Mexico. And this really has not changed in the last 24 hours. I know folks are sharing all kinds of model runs and there's Armageddon coming towards Texas. It really has not changed. It has been kind of this northeastern Mexico deep South Texas, and this is the trend in that mean or in that consensus of all the models over the last 24 hours. And if anything, it has shifted a little bit to the south
Yeah.
from this time yesterday. And, you know, we're sort of splitting hairs here 5 days out. Is it Padre Island, you know, Port Mansfield, or is it down here in northern Mexico? This is definitely, you know, within the realm of possibility that the center could cross the South Texas coast. Most likely now it is going to go into northern Mexico. You know, as you mentioned earlier, we still have the cone up here to around Matagorda Bay. So should you be paying attention, Corpus Christi, Rockport, Port Aransas, Port Lavaca, Port O'Connor, absolutely, you should be paying attention to this. Could things change here still in the Gulf of Mexico? Yes. There hasn't been a lot of philosophy change with respect to the track. And what I mean by that is we still have a trough or weakness developing over Texas this weekend. So if we do in fact get a little bit of a stronger storm, the turn here could be a little bit more to the right, which could bring it a little bit further up the coast. But if we maintain a weaker storm, it may end up further south here, even further south than what we're showing here. And so still some uncertainty, but maybe starting to answer some of the questions we've been having over the last couple of days. And tightening it up here in northeastern Mexico and South Texas. And we can see the intensity trends striking the Yucatan, really falling off down to the tropical storm. And then again, we sort of saw this morning maybe some favorable conditions. We continue to see the potential for more favorable conditions in the Gulf of Mexico, but the intensity guidance still not really doing a whole lot. This could be a number of reasons. One, it could be disrupted so much over the Yucatan. It's just going to take some time for it to rebuild over the Gulf of Mexico. The second part of that is it's going to run out of time. You know, it's going to move across. There's not a lot of water between the Yucatan and, say, the Mexican or South Texas coast. So you're talking 48 hours, maybe a little bit longer at the most at its speed that is expected. And so there's just not a lot of time for it to rebuild in this area. If it comes a little bit further north, it may give it a little more time. If it's a little bit stronger when it leaves the Yucatan, it could be a little bit stronger. But you can see here the Hurricane Center guidance is, or the official forecast is kind of at the upper end of some of the intensity guidance right now. So we'll see. There's still some uncertainty with the intensity as we go forward, but it's looking increasingly likely. You know, I'll let you get into this in a second, Scott. Looking increasingly likely we will have some impacts on the South Texas coast. Specifically with this is the tropical storm force winds, the most likely time of arrival now for tropical storm force winds. And you can see the percentages now have continued to increase on the South Texas coast, now up to 30 to 40% here. Port Isabel, South Padre Island, and most likely Sunday evening for those sustained tropical storm force winds to come to the coast. Lower probabilities further up to the north. But I'll let you start. We're going to start getting into more of the impacts now as we're getting closer here into the state of Texas. And I'll turn over to you to talk a little bit about the impacts we're starting to take a look at.
And Jeff, if you would just go back to that graph, the tropical storm wind graph, just for a second. I just want to point out that the green shaded area is a little bit closer now to actually Galveston Bay. So like you said, these are sustained tropical force winds, but even outside this cone, you can still have gusts up to 40 miles per hour tropical storm wind speeds. And certainly there are going to be some impacts. Yeah. So what we're seeing this is the 7-day rainfall forecast right now. This is 7 days. And you can see some of those amounts are pretty decent around Houston. Of course, you would expect higher amounts, which we see down in South Texas, around 4 inches or so. This is not all impacts from Beryl. We do have that trough that we've been talking about earlier. We didn't show it in this one, but we talked about that trough, which will sort of will depend largely on how far that digs in to really the state of Texas. And with that trough, there's going to be a boundary that sets up from that. And so some of this rainfall is from that trough. And we could see that rainfall starting as early as Saturday. But then as we get into Sunday and Monday, we'll see more of the influence from the rain bands of Beryl coming from that. But when it's all said and done, I don't think anybody, as hot as it's been in Texas, is going to complain about the rainfall. So there is some beneficial rainfall coming from this. But along with that, with some of those squalls, we'll see those higher wind gusts, 40 miles per hour plus. But Yeah, we'll keep updating this now as we get closer to it. So again, with the just want to summarize the impacts. Beryl currently bringing devastating hurricane force winds to the island of Jamaica and expected to do so for the Cayman Islands as well. Life-threatening flash floods and mudslides from the rainfall are expected, and also in southern Haiti as well. Damaging winds from storm surge and heavy rainfall are also expected on the Yucatan Peninsula and Belize beginning Thursday night as Beryl approaches as a hurricane. Hurricane and tropical storm warnings are now in effect for portions of that area, which we talked about. And number 4, now we start in the summaries. Texas comes up. There remains an uncertainty in the track. I want to emphasize that, Jeff. You talked about that. The track is still fairly wide, although we're starting to get that center really hadn't fluctuated too much between northern Mexico and say South Padre Island. But, even north of that, say up to Kingsville and those areas, that they are on the stronger convective side of this storm. So they are definitely going to feel the impacts from storm surge, higher tides, and also rip currents. It's not mentioned in point 4, but I think that's one of the most dangerous things that people need to be aware of. I know a lot of people are going to the beach, and it's just, bottom line is just don't get in the water. Rip currents are very hard to detect. There's no human being that can swim against a rip current. So the best thing to do is just enjoy the sand on the beach. If it's not raining, there should be plenty of sunshine. The further north you go, say Rockport, Port Aransas, at least for Friday and Saturday, things might start to deteriorate when we get into Saturday afternoon and Sunday. But stay out of that water because those rip currents are serious, and we will definitely see those with the higher swells.
And even way over here in Florida, Panhandle, Mississippi, Alabama, west coast of Florida, as Beryl gets out here, it's going to send these big swells this way. So well away from the system, be prepared for those dangerous rip currents. And then also along the Texas coast, we're not quite there yet. Maybe as we get into Friday, we'll start to take a look at the tides and see what we're going to see with respect to tides on the Texas coast. We're pretty confident they'll probably be elevated to some degree, especially down on the mid and lower Texas coast. So we'll be paying attention to that and seeing if we reach any levels that would cause any issues as we get to Sunday and Monday.
Jeff, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our Weather Insights YouTube channel, and be sure to share the channel so that others can stay informed on the latest of what is going on in the tropics. And join us on the next Weather Insights podcast.